Now, turning now to the presidential race, based on early voting results and polling, the nation remains deeply divided on whether Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton should become our next commander-in-chief. But many wonder if the polling is a reliable predictor of a race outcome and whether early voting results will impact turnout on Election Day. You know, I swear, the news cycle on this thing, I think I said at the beginning of the show, I'm beginning to get the jitters. You know, every time you turn on, cable news and you're watching and all the changes and the new polls that are coming out, and some polls are putting them closer and then some are, stretching them farther away. Nolan, I just want to get your handle on everything that's happened kind of in the last week. Catch me up on what you're thinking from.
Well, I mean, you see, it's all over the place. And it suggests there's a volatility in this race, that it's not settled. I think you all had a poll out this morning, didn't you, Steve, that it was 41-34 Clinton in Michigan. How much undecided is that? It's 20-some% undecided. That is huge at this stage of the game. And I wonder how much of that undecided vote are people who just aren't going to vote for either candidate. Well, they'll show up, but they're just going to skip the presidential piece of the ballot. There's so many variables at
work. Let me ask you this. Is there a possibility that the people say that they're undecided are people who don't publicly want to say that they're going to vote for Donald Trump?
I think there's
Is there a little phenomenon of that?
I think there's a lot of that.
I mean, you also had, you have this phenomenon in lots of elections here where people don't want to be honest with pollsters. Right. 2008, there was fear that people were saying, I'll vote for Barack Obama because they sort of felt like that was the right thing to say, and in fact that they weren't going to do it. His numbers turned out to be pretty close to what people predicted. I mean, I think the polls have. You can't look at one poll. You can't look at one poll at a certain time. You got to look at the averages over time, and I think they tend to come pretty close to what's going to happen on Election Day. I mean, there are much more sophisticated ways of analyzing poll numbers now that tell us what voter behavior is really going to be like. What Nate Silver does, for instance, at 538.com, which is build a model that polling is a part of and the aggregate polling is a part of, I think is a really great tool for people to be able to see what voter behavior is going to look like.
Does that influence the way people are voting now at all? Because we have all this early voting going on.
I don't think so. I don't think people walk in there and say, I'm going to pick the winner. I'm going to pick who I think is going to win. I think people still vote for the candidate they choose. I've never seen the polls so volatile, though. I've never woke up and seen one poll at 2% and one at 11% in terms of the gap. I don't know what's going on out there. A lot of it has to do with how it's weighted. These pollsters, it is a science, but there's a lot goes into it. You take a call list and you assume an X amount of Republicans, an X amount of Democrats. You try to anticipate the turnout. That's a hard thing to do today when there's so many independents. Independents now the largest group, and people are moving between the three groups. I've got 3 adult kids, and one's a Republican, one's a Democrat, one's an independent.
Wow, can I sit at your table for Thanksgiving this year?
And I asked them over the weekend, how are you voting? And one was voting for Jill Stein, one was voting for Gary Johnson, and one said she was going to skip the presidential ballot altogether. And I thought, if that's typical, this is going to be a very unpredictable election night.
I'm surprised that you even had that conversation because we've had to ban politics in our family.
I was going to say,
we've had to ban. We won't talk about it when we all get together. And even among friends, we've had to say, you know what, this is a politics-free dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I mean, people are tired of the fight. I mean, it's a pretty bitter campaign with two very sort of extreme choices on the ballot. I mean, people also need to sort of keep their heads, though. Even the poll today, the Free Press poll today, shows it narrowing to 7. Okay, 7's not narrow, though, right? 7 is a very, very wide gap to close in 10 days, for sure. So I'm not sure how volatile it will be.
But that undecided number is so large.
It is.
And
that's been there the whole time.
If you have the leading candidate still barely above 40%, that's, but usually by this time somebody's, they're both candidates are deep into the 40s.
Yeah, they should be.
And, you still have what's the interesting thing to me in that poll is that you still have Hillary Clinton about where she was. Yeah. She hasn't picked up votes. Yeah. Donald Trump has lost votes. Yeah. So the question is, will those votes come back to him? Where will they go?
The gap itself matters less than the advantage. So if Hillary Clinton wins Michigan by 1 vote, she gets the,
gets it home.
and I think the electoral total for her is
Still
going
very
to be
much in
much
her favor.
higher
I'd agree.
than the popular
popular
gap
yeah.
will be because of these sort of.
And so that's what makes these key state polls very important, and they've been all over the place
Right.
too. I mean, Florida's been back and forth. Other thing I would watch is, you know, she's raised a tremendous amount of money. You know, for someone who has decried money in politics, she's still got a huge war chest sitting there, and she's going to apply all of it, the biggest part of it, to get out the vote. Sure. They've got a tremendous get out the vote machine. Yeah. Donald Trump, having sort of banished the Republican establishment, doesn't have the same election day apparatus, and that is very important in winning these elections.
When you look at these pictures of early voting in states like North Carolina, states with very heavy African American populations, you look at those lines, you look at the faces in those lines, that get out the vote apparatus you're talking about is very much already at work.
Democrats are already sending out emails every day to the people they believe are their supporters. Have you voted yet? Have you voted yet? Have you voted yet?
Well, and they're also talking about don't be complacent. Don't think a 7 percentage lead, 9 percentage lead, you still have to show up and vote. You know.